Good evening and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget. It is Wednesday. Wednesday, November 13th, year of our Lord 2024. I took a little hiatus last week. I had my anniversary. My mom was moving out here to Utah with me. So I had a lot of things going on last week. Took a little hiatus. Sorry about that. We are back to a full schedule again this week. At least actually more of a half schedule. We'll try to get to more of a full schedule next week. But November 13th, we're in the thick of things for both college and the NFL. Second round of playoff rankings released last night. I'll get into that. NFL is getting down to the sweet spot, a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving, which really becomes gut check time for a lot of teams. That is what this show is going to be about, both college and the NFL. Before I go ahead and get into my topics, let me just go ahead and say if you like the video here on YouTube, please like and subscribe right down here. Leave a comment with some of your constructive criticism, picks that you like for the week. I love to see those as well. And if you prefer the audio version, this podcast is available on places like Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and basically wherever you get your podcast. So please like, subscribe, wherever you like to listen. But let's go ahead and not wait around anymore and dive into the show. Like I said, this is going to be an NFL college football show today. Football season is in crunch time for both college and NFL, so a lot of things to talk about. We're going to start in the NFL. We're we're actually past midway, almost to 2/3 way through the season, but we're getting down to crunch time. We're kind of getting an idea of what the teams we're going to think are going to be in the playoffs and the teams that are going to have to win down the stretch to make a playoff run as well. But what I wanted to do at this point, and what I usually like to do at this point of the season, is give my contenders and pretenders. So that'll be my NFL contenders or pretenders will be my number one topic. Then we'll move to number two, and that'll be the college football. College football playoff rankings were released last night, second round of those. I'm going to go through the teams in each conference and the group of 5 teams that are still alive in the playoff hunt. Give you each team that is still alive in the playoff hunt. There is more than you think probably, so I want to break that down as well. And then as always, I'll finish my show with my picks. This is the Week 12 college football picks and Week 11 NFL picks. Let's go ahead and dive into the show. So, as I mentioned in the open, the first topic of the day is going to be my NFL contenders or pretenders. Let me just go ahead and give you what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about Super Bowl contenders. I'm not even really talking about playoff contenders. I'm talking about teams that I think could make a run to the AFC and NFC championship games. So Final Four, kind of top 4 seed contenders, because there's a lot of teams that are available for the playoffs right now that can contend for the playoffs, and there's only a handful of teams that I really think could win a Super Bowl and even make a Super Bowl for that matter as well. So these are the teams that I think can make a run in the playoffs and get to the AFC and NFC championship games. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate 4 teams as obvious contenders, and that is the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs, the Detroit Lions, who I think are the best team in the NFC, the Baltimore Ravens, who are really starting to look good right now. If they could shore up that defense, they're a really, really top-level contender, and the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills have some injuries with Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper, but once they get fully healthy, I like what this team is doing here. Josh Allen is taking care of the ball better than he ever has in his career, so I like the trajectory of this team. But let's go ahead and dive into the teams that are a little bit on the fence. Most people, at least me, are on the fence about whether they're a contender or pretender. We'll start in the AFC, and we're going to start in the AFC North with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got them as a contender. Now, I know a lot of people thought they were a pretender coming into the season. I didn't even have them as a playoff team coming in the season, but the Pittsburgh Steelers just do what they do, and they do what they do really well. They play good defense. They play sound football. They run the football well. But what they're getting out of Russell Wilson, I didn't think was still in the tank. He is playing really well for them right now, and that was really ballsy move by Mike Tomlin to insert him as the starter because you were winning games. Yes, Justin Fields didn't look great, but you were winning football games, and to go ahead and put somebody else in, it could have went off the rails if you start losing games, but Mike Tomlin is a great head coach. He knows what he's doing. This Steelers team looks real, so that's why I have them as a contender. We'll move to the AFC West, and we have the Denver Broncos, who are currently sitting in the 7th seed in the AFC if the playoffs were to start today. As of right now, I have the Denver Broncos as a pretender. The reason I have them as a pretender, rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, not a ton of offensive weapons. That defense is really good. I'll give them that. That defense is really good. But rookie quarterback, lack of weapons on the offensive side. I just think they're a year or two away, this team. I like the trajectory of this team, but right now they are not a contender to make a run in the playoffs. We'll stay in the AFC West, and we're going to go to the Los Angeles Chargers. and I have the Chargers as a pretender as well. But before I get into why, I love what Jim Harbaugh is doing. Justin Herbert is playing really good football right now, but very similar to the Broncos. Limited weapons on the offensive side. They kind of have to win a certain way on the offensive side. Defense is good, not great. This team wins with culture, and that's what Jim Harbaugh brings to any place he goes, whether it's college or pro. They win with culture, and they win with sound, fundamentally sound, smart football. That's how Jim Harbaugh teams win, and that's how this Jim Harbaugh team is winning. In the playoffs, you're going to need some playmakers. You're going to need some game breakers, and I don't really see them having that outside of Justin Herbert. So they, I think, maybe are a year or two away like the Broncos. So that's why I have the Los Angeles Chargers currently as a pretender. And the last team I wanted to touch on the AFC is actually in the AFC South, and that is the Houston Texans. And currently, right now, I have the Houston Texans as a pretender. Don't love the injuries they've suffered on the offensive side. They got Nico Collins back, but Diggs is out for the year. Joe Mixon's been in and out of the lineup. Let's just call a spade. C.J. Stroud has struggled this year. We thought he'd kind of take off after his stellar rookie season. Had a little bit of a sophomore slump. He struggled so far this year, so that's a question mark. I still think he's a very good quarterback, but there's a question mark there. The defense is good in the front side. Their back end can be had. So just not a complete team, not a team that I think can really contend at the top level of the AFC. Definitely will be a playoff team. I'm pretty sure they will win the AFC South, but as far as actually making a run in the playoffs, I don't see that from the Houston Texans, so that's why I got them as a pretender. Let's go ahead and move to the NFC. And in the NFC, we'll start in the NFC East, and I have the Philadelphia Eagles as the first team I wanted to go over, and I like the Eagles as a contender. I like a lot of what the Eagles are doing. They're playing really good football right now. They've gotten everybody back. Devontae Smith's back from injury. A.J. Brown's back from injury. Saquon Barkley's doing just unbelievable things on a football field. Jalen Hurts is playing really well at the quarterback position as well. So this is a team that is playing really well at the right time. They're getting healthy. They're playing better. And it seems kind of the noise with Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff and some of that stuff there has started to go away as they started winning games. So I really like what this Eagles team is doing. Defense needs to get better. They're still not great on the back end. They're kind of good in that front seven with a lot of their young players, but they're getting better week after week. This Eagles team at the top end with that talent and that roster they have, I think can contend for an AFC or for an NFC championship game. So that's why I have them as a contender. Move to the NFC North, and I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings, and I have the Minnesota Vikings as a pretender. I love Sam Darnold. This game right here is at USC. Sam Darnold was a quarterback in this picture there. So I love Sam Darnold. He's one of my favorite USC players at that time as well. But I don't trust him in big games. I just don't. I haven't seen him play in a lot of big games in the NFL. I haven't seen him win a lot of big games and make a lot of plays in those big games. So I don't trust him in those moments. Offense they have a ton of studs on offense, whether it's Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson's back now, Aaron Jones out of the backfield. Defense is playing really well under Brian Flores. This to me is the question mark. It's Sam Darnold, and what can you get out of him in a big game, in a playoff game? And that's why I have the Vikings as a pretender. We'll stay in the NFC North. I'm going to talk about the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go ahead and label the Green Bay Packers a contender. Reason is their defense is getting better to better each and every week. Their offense has a ton of young talents. If Jordan Love can cool it on the turnovers and cool it on the risky play and get back to how he was playing at the end of last year, this team can be really dangerous with what they have as weaponry on the offensive side, with all the wide receivers they have, Josh Jacobs in the backfield, the tight ends they have. Their defense is getting better. This is a team that could contend for an NFC championship game. So the Packers, I believe, are contenders right now. We'll move back to the NFC East, and we're going to go to the team who is actually tied in the division lead right now, and that is the Washington Commanders. And I'm sorry to say, there's been a great story with Jane Daniels, rookie quarterback, new coach Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury. Been a great story so far for the Commanders, but I have them as pretenders. The reason why I do that defense, although it is getting better, is still a question mark for me going into the postseason. The offense, I think, is good, but you're starting to see they're a little more limited. They've had injuries at the running back position, whether it's Eckler or Robinson have both missed time. Terry McLaurin's really their only consistent receiving threat. Zach Ertz can be that at times, but he's getting old. He can't be that guy consistently. So this Commanders team, great story. I think a really good season if they can get to the playoffs, whether it's a wild card of the division. I just don't see them making a run in the playoffs. We're going to move over to the NFC West, and we're going to talk about the defending NFC champions, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. Now, they're not playing great this year, and they haven't played well. They played okay on the road at Tampa Bay, but got the victory. But I still have them as a contender because I've seen them do this. They have the roster to do this. Christian McCaffrey's back. Deebo Samuel's healthy. Kittle's looking like Gronk all of a sudden. Like he is just playing outside of his mind. The defense is a huge question mark for this 49ers team. The defense just isn't as good as it's been in the past. So that is a huge question mark. But I've seen this team do it. I've seen them play in Super Bowls. I've seen them play in NFC Championship games over the last 4 to 5 years. So that's why I have them as a contender. We'll stay in the NFC West, and we're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. And as of right now, I have the Arizona Cardinals as a pretender. The reason why is I don't trust Kyler Murray in big games, to be honest with you. Young coach and Jonathan Gannon. Defense is okay, getting better, but they're not great. Love their offensive pieces. James Conner is one of the most underrated players in the entire league. Good tight end in McBride. You have some good young wide receivers in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson, but still probably a year or two away with this team as well. Good story for the Cardinals also, but they are definitely a pretender in my eyes, and we'll finish in the NFC South, and we'll go to who's the current division leader right now in the NFC South, and that is the Atlanta Falcons, and the Atlanta Falcons to me are a pretender. First of all, they're a very inconsistent team week to week. That was a bad loss last week to a Saints team that had an interim coach coaching at the time. Kirk Cousins, you really can't trust in the postseason. We've seen him. He hasn't done well in the postseason. A very young team outside of Kirk Cousins. Pitts, London, Bijan, all very young players. Defense is pretty good. They're not great. Just a lot of question marks on this team, and consistency is the biggest question mark I have for this Atlanta Falcons team, and that is going to be, I think, the biggest thing that holds them back at the end of the day. So the Falcons, in my opinion, are pretenders. So that was my NFL contenders or pretenders segment. If you want to leave a comment in the comment sections telling me who you think I was wrong about, love to see that. But that's how I see it stack out right now in the NFL. All these teams are probably going to be playoff teams, whether they're wild card or division winners. But not all these teams are really teams that could be playing on championship weekend, both in the AFC and NFC. So let's go ahead and move to college football. And as I talked about last night, new rankings last night dropped in college football. I'm pretty sure if you watch this show or if you're a fan of college football or just football in general, you've probably seen the rankings at this time. So not going to go and break down each ranking and talk about that. There's millions of shows out there that'll talk and break down and react to the rankings. We're not going to do that right now. But what I wanted to do is kind of handicap the teams that are still alive in the college football playoff race, break it down by conference, and give you the teams that are still alive, teams you should be watching as the season comes down the stretch to see if they can make a playoff push. We'll start in the Big Ten. And the Big Ten actually has 4 teams ranked in the top 5. And all 4 of those teams are obviously still alive in the college football playoff. That is Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. But unfortunately for the Big Ten, it's not a deep year for them this year. That is it. I cannot foresee a team underneath those 4 making a run, and they would have to win the conference, and they're all at least 2 games back of all these teams in the top 4, and most of them have lost to these teams in the top 4. So with the Big Ten, really good at the top end with those 4 teams in the top 5 of the college football playoff, but that is it. They probably will. There's a really good chance all 4 of those teams get into the college football playoff because they really don't play each other outside of Ohio State and Indiana next week. So it's a really good chance that they all get in. But those are the only 4 teams in the Big Ten that are still alive for the college football playoff. That is number 1, Oregon, number 2, Ohio State, number 4, Penn State, and number 5, Indiana. Now let's move to the SEC. SEC is deeper this year. Maybe not as good at the top end, but they're a deeper conference this year, and I see them having 6 teams still alive for the college football playoff, and that is Texas, who is number 3 currently, Tennessee, who I believe is 7, Alabama, who is 10, Ole Miss, who is 11, Georgia, who is 12, and A&M, I believe, is 14. Those are the 6 teams I still have alive for the college football playoff in the SEC. I know that LSU, South Carolina, and Missouri are all ranked. All of those teams have at least 2 losses, and in South Carolina and LSU's case, they have 3 losses, and their only opportunities would be to win the conference to get into the college football playoff. And all the teams that they've lost to most of the teams that they've lost to are ahead of them in the rankings already. So I just don't see a clear path for those teams. Technically, they're still alive, South Carolina, LSU, and Missouri, but I don't really see a realistic path that they actually get into the college football playoff. So that's why I have those 6 teams as Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, and A&M as the teams that are still alive in the SEC with realistic chances to make the college football playoff. In the Big 12, there is actually a handful of teams alive in the Big 12, even though they're probably only going to get 1 team in, even if BYU goes into the conference championship game undefeated. They'll most likely get 1 team in, but there's still a lot of teams alive in that Big 12 championship race. And since they're alive in the championship race, they're technically alive to get into the college football playoff. And that is BYU, who is currently leading the conference with an undefeated record, Kansas State, who I believe is in 3rd or 4th place right now, Colorado, who is in 2nd place and controls their destiny to get to Dallas and play in the Big 12 championship game. Iowa State is still alive even after back-to-back losses. Arizona State is still alive too with 2 losses. And believe it or not, West Virginia is still alive. And if any team is going to be wacky and get a 5-4, currently a 5-4 team and a potentially 4-loss team into the college football playoff and just get a lot of heads spinning around college football, any conference is going to do that. It's going to be the Big 12. So all those teams are still alive in the conference race. So by default, they're all still alive in the college football playoff race as well. Let's go ahead and move to the ACC. Like the Big 12, still a decent amount of teams alive, not nearly as much as the Big 12, but I think at the end of the day, it's still probably going to be a 1-bid league. Whoever wins the championship, I think, is going to be the only team that really gets in from the ACC. Is that right? Probably not. It just looks like that's how it's shaking out right now. Those teams still alive are Miami, coming off their loss last week to Georgia Tech, but they're still at the top of the conference. They're actually 2nd in the conference right now. Leading the conference with no conference losses and just 1 loss overall is SMU. They're in the driver's seat to get to Charlotte to play in the ACC championship game and be the representative for the ACC in the college football playoff. But there's still 2 other teams alive, and that is Clemson and Louisville. They're going to need some help, both those teams, but they're still alive in the ACC championship race. And just like in the Big 12 championship, if they're still alive in the conference championship race, by default, they're technically still alive in the college football playoff race. So those are your Power 4 teams that are still alive to get into the college football playoff. Wanted to go over the Group of 5 and independent teams that are still alive as well. Most of these teams are either going to have to win their individual conferences or get at-large bids in the case of the independent teams as well. Starting with the Group of 5 and independent teams, we're going to start with Boise State. Boise State right now is in the driver's seat. They're sitting at the 12th seed. They would be in right now if the season were to end today. They're the favorite as a Group of 5 conference champion to get in. So Boise State is currently the favorite for that, and they are still alive, of course. Notre Dame is obviously still alive and currently would be in the playoff field if the season were to end today. Even with that loss to Northern Illinois, they've been able to right the ship. They still have Army left on their schedule, still have SC left on their schedule, even though that doesn't look as good as it could have been. But still, Notre Dame is for sure alive. Army is still alive, especially with that game next week against Notre Dame. If they can find a way to win that game, they could get into the playoff as well. UNLV still has an outside shot if they can win the Mountain West title, beating Boise State and winning that Mountain West title and avenging one of their losses. That's kind of more of an outside, unrealistic shot, but they still actually do have a shot to be the 5th best conference champion. Washington State, currently not in a conference, kind of independent like Notre Dame, is still alive as well. They're currently ranked 18th in the college football playoff rankings. The problem for Washington State is because they're not in the conference. Just like Notre Dame, they would have to be within the top 11, basically, to get into the college football playoff. Can they go from 18 to 11 in the next 3 to 4 weeks? That's going to be the question, and that's going to be difficult for them. And then finally, we have Tulane in the American Athletic Conference. They snuck into the rankings this week at 25. They're still alive. They could beat Army in the American Athletic Conference and potentially get in if teams like Boise State stumble in front of them. So there's a group of 5 teams and independent teams that are still alive. It is Boise State, Notre Dame, Army, UNLV, Washington State, and Tulane are all still alive for the college football playoff race if they can win their individual conferences. And in the case of Notre Dame and Washington State, can end up in the top 11. That has been kind of the breakdown there. Wanted to go over and kind of handicap that because that's what makes this college football expanded playoff so much better is all these teams are still alive. If this was a 14 playoff in a chaotic year that we've had, there would be a lot of teams that would be like, oh shit, we're probably already out of it, even though we have a case to be one of the best teams in the country. So with this expanded playoff, that's over 20 teams. I think that's over like 24 teams still alive to get into the playoff. Not all these teams are going to be contenders to win the whole thing, but at least they can get into the playoff and give themselves a chance. And that's what this expanded 12-team playoff has done. And it hasn't really watered down the regular season that much either, which is one of the biggest complaints from people that were against the expanded playoff. But let's go ahead and finish off my show with this week's college football and NFL picks. We'll start in college football, and we'll start with the big noon kickoff game, and that is going to be Utah at number 17, Colorado, and Colorado is currently a 10-point favorite in this game. As I mentioned before, Colorado controls their own destiny to get to the college football playoff and to get to the Big 12 championship and to potentially get to the college football playoff. They've been playing really well, coming off a big road victory against Texas Tech last week. Utah played one of their best games of the season last week, even in a loss to BYU. Now, they lose Brandon Rose, so it probably will be Isaac Wilson, so don't love that. 10 points is just a little bit too much for me. I think this Utah team comes out inspired. I think they play good defense like they always do at Utah. I think Colorado wins, but Utah covers. Give me Utah plus 10 in this game here. And then we'll go to the SEC, and we have kind of a sneaky good matchup of teams that are outside of the college football playoff, in my opinion, but are still ranked teams. And that is number 23, Missouri, and number 21, South Carolina. And South Carolina is a 12-point favorite at home over Missouri. South Carolina, no one's really talking about it that much right now. They're playing really good football. They went into Vanderbilt, who was a good team this year, and hammered Vanderbilt's. They're playing really good football right now. This South Carolina team, running the ball really well with Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders. Their defense gets after it. You saw what they did 2 weeks ago against Texas A&M at home, hammered Texas A&M at home. They got after Diego Pavia and the Vanderbilt quarterback this week. They're just a team. They're playing really well, and they're peaking at the right time. They had some close losses. If they didn't have one of those, they would be alive in the college football playoff. But I really like this team. I think they hammer Missouri. I think Missouri is absolute frauds. They're a 2-loss team, but their 2 losses come on the road in the SEC, and they were outscored 72-10 in those matchups. So I don't believe in Missouri at all. They got lucky to win last week at home against Oklahoma. So give me South Carolina to win and cover. South Carolina minus 12 in this game. And then we'll actually go to the Big 12, and we have Arizona State at Kansas State. And this is a big game in the Big 12. This is kind of an elimination game in the Big 12 title race. Arizona State is quietly playing really good football under Kenny Dillingham. This is a 9-point spread. Kansas State is favored by 9 points at home. They haven't played great. They're coming off a bye, but before that, they lost on the road at Houston. So this is not a great Kansas State team as good as we thought they would be this year. And this Arizona State team is getting confidence week after week. They're supposed to get one of my favorite players in college football back in Cam Scattaboo. I like this Arizona State team to go in there. I think they could pull up the upset, but I think they definitely could cover. So give me Arizona State plus 10 in this game. And then we'll actually go to a group of 5 game, and that is number 25, Tulane, at Navy, and Tulane is currently a 7-point favorite in this game. Navy is kind of falling on hard times after that Notre Dame loss. They lost again the following week. They're coming off of bye, rested, probably going to be playing better. They're at home. The way they play football is just a tough way to game plan for and a tough thing to stop. So I think Tulane gets the victory at Navy, but I think Navy covers. Give me Navy plus 7. Blake Horvath and that offense gets back on track for the Navy midshipmen. And then we'll go ahead and finish out my picks for this week in college football with the biggest game of the weekend, and that's back in the SEC, and that is number 7 Tennessee and number 12 Georgia, and Georgia is currently a 10-point favorite in this game. Now, Nico Iamaleava is questionable for this game, and that is a big That is a big question. If he can't go, then that is going to change a lot of things. Right now, he's questionable and more of a game time decision. Georgia looked awful last week. They looked awful last week. They were basically gifted a touchdown to start the game, and then they were just ran out of the stadium in Ole Miss last week. Their offensive lines are struggling. They have really barely any running game. Their quarterback, Carson Beck, is not playing well right now, and you could tell he's losing confidence. Their defense is okay, but it can be had, and especially when they're on the field a ton because their offense can't get anything going. But here's the thing with Georgia. They were left out of the college football playoff, at least right now, if the season were to end today. But the season doesn't end today, so that's a silver lining for them. And they always seem to respond when no one believes in them and their backs are against the wall. I've been back and forth on that with the questionable status of Nico Iamaleava. I think Georgia wins the game. I think Georgia covers. Give me Georgia -10. This just seems to be the situation that Kirby Smart rallies the troops. They play their best football. They get victories, and they look really good. Remember, we were all talking about them going into the Texas game like, oh, no, Texas is a better team. Texas can outplay Georgia. Texas can beat Georgia at their own game. They went into Texas and hammered them. Now they get this game at home. Big spread, but I think they cover it and come back and bounce back in a big way. Give me Georgia -10 in this game. Then we'll go ahead and finish up with my NFL picks for this week. We'll start with the game in the AFC North, and this is kind of be for the division lead, and that is the Ravens at the Steelers, and the Ravens are currently a 3-point favorite in this game. The Ravens are great on offense, whether it's Derrick Henry, whether it's Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews is playing better, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman's having a really good career. They got Deontay Johnson now, or a good season. They got Deontay Johnson now, so they got just a ton of weapons. The problem is their defense has to go on the field at some point during the game, and their defense has been flat out awful. Teams are just going up and down the field on this Ravens team. This is one of the best rivalries in the sport and has been for decades now. I think the Ravens could win this game, but I think the Steelers keep it close. Give me the Steelers +3 to cover in this game. Then we'll go to the Falcons at the Broncos, and the Broncos are currently a 2.5-point favorite in this game. Now, let's see how the Broncos bounce back after that just crushing loss. You thought you had the game at hand. You couldn't block for 3 seconds to get the field goal kickoff. Field goal got blocked, and you lost what could have been a huge win on the road at Kansas City. So that's a tough pill to swallow if you're the Denver Broncos. I think they bounce back at home. This Atlanta Falcons team, I just don't trust them. I've never trusted Kirk Cousins that much. Give me the Broncos to win and cover at home. Broncos -2.5 is the play there for me. Then we'll move to the NFC West, and we have the Seahawks at the 49ers. 49ers are currently a 6.5-point favorite in this game. 49ers own the Seahawks. They own the Seahawks. They own Geno Smith. They can make them uncomfortable. They can make them make mistakes, and that seems to be the difference in the games. They were able to kind of get margin on the Seahawks in their house a couple weeks back. Now it's in San Francisco. Now McCaffrey's back. I think the 49ers finally roll in the game this year. So give me the 49ers -6.5 in this game to win and cover. Then we have the biggest game of the weekend, and that is the Chiefs at the Bills. And the Bills are actually a 2.5-point favorite. Now, Keon Coleman is probably not going to be there. Amari Cooper is questionable. So this kind of changes things a lot. But here's the thing with the Chiefs. They've kind of been playing with disaster these last couple of weeks, winning by the skin of their teeth. When you're playing like this, yes, this is a really good team. Best team in the league. Really good defense. Great quarterback. Great coach. Not saying they're not a good team. But when you're playing the way that they're playing, a loss is going to find you. And the Bills, even though the Bills always seem to lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs, they always seem to somehow beat the Chiefs in the regular season. I think a loss finally finds the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's this week against the Bills. And not only do the Bills win, but they cover because it's only 2.5. So give me the Bills -2.5 to win and cover in this game. And then we'll finish with the Sunday night game, and that is the Bengals at the Chargers. The Bengals need this game desperately. If they lose this game and fall to 4-7, they're probably out of the playoff hunt, especially with what they have left on their schedule and some of the division games they have. The Chargers are a team. It's not sexy. It's not great to watch. It's not exciting. They win games. They win games by culture and out coaching you and not making mistakes. That's how they win games. But I think a desperate Bengals team getting kind of a mini bye because they played last Thursday and needing to win this game is the reason they win this game. So give me the Bengals to win. The spread actually is Chargers minus 1.5. So I think the Bengals win, and obviously they would cover at that point. Bengals plus 1.5 is the play there for me. So those have been my NFL and college football picks, and that has been my show for today. Of course, like I said at the beginning, if you like this show here, please like and subscribe on the video version on YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget. Leave me some of your picks for the week or some of the comments you have from the other portions of the show. And if you prefer the audio version, it is available on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. Please like and subscribe there as well. But thank you again for watching and listening, and have a great day.